Islamic tradition is in Genesis 1:29, which says we are to eat plants.
Right.
Climatologists and meteorologists from the
Okay.
United Nations recommend, yeah, a vegan diet to combat global warming because animal agriculture and fossil fuel industries are the two main causes of global warming. Plus, if you believe in all loving creator, then of course you would be a vegan because being anything else would not be loving towards the other creatures.
That's true. This is Scott Harney, vegan biker, here with two very good friends, but friends I haven't seen for a while. Felice, to the right, to the well, I guess to the
Hello?
left of me, and then John Cheney. Um, I've known you guys. Well, I met you first about 30 years ago in Detroit. Do you recall that? And John, I met you were working at what was it, Ohm Cafe, correct?
The Home Cafe in Ferndale. John Chene. Don't mix me up with Cheney.
I'm sorry, I'm sorry. So this is Scott Harney, John Shane. I'm sorry, I mispronounced his name, but I know he was John anyway. Atomic, right?
That's
And
okay.
you're the owner of
But
Atomic
yeah, we
Foods.
met at the Home, and that was
Yeah,
like 30 years ago. Yes,
30 years ago.
that's
Yeah,
when I was a waiter there. Yeah.
and I was a vegetarian, and my wife was vegetarian, and we met both of you, and through your inspiration, we became vegan. And of
Oh,
course, I've
that's
been
nice.
switching off between vegetarianism and veganism, but then I went strict vegan again last year. So, but you both have been vegan for now. Felicia, you said you've been vegan for 33 years straight.
53,
50
I'm sorry,
50
53. My
years.
God, wow. And John, you how long you been vegan for?
uh, almost 38 years.
38 years. Wow. And look at you, you guys. Look great. And so it's a myth that we need animal protein or
Protein,
animal
yeah,
products to
that's a
live.
gigantic myth put out by
Absolute
the
myth.
animal foods industries, of course.
Um, Now, Felice, when I first met you, you had some interesting, your whole movement from like the social justice to veganism, was interesting. What actually prompted you to become fully vegan?
Well, I remember actually it was going to church and hearing the priest talk about suffering and thou shalt not kill. I'm thinking, well, gee whiz, my family, we eat killed animals all the time, so it didn't make sense to me, until I
Right,
began questioning that,
right,
and I got some flack from my family and my relatives, but then it just began making sense. Like, wow, I am causing oppression, suffering, and death to all these creatures in order to eat this animal food. So I'm going to stop. I don't want to be the cause of that. I finally admitted it. You know what I mean? I always justified it and rationalized it before, saying everybody else is doing it. The priest says it's okay to do it. There are scriptures that say it's okay, but it's all a bunch of BS. It's just all a bunch of excuses to, and mostly made on a part of the animal foods industry, which is a huge industry, as we all know.
yeah. And John, now you also have been vegan for a number of years, and I think Felicia played a very big role in your veganism, correct? Why don't you tell us a little bit about your journey to veganism?
Oh, absolutely. Well, it actually started when I was, as I mentioned earlier, in first grade in my Catholic religion class. Similar to Felice's experiences, I saw that thou shalt not kill. And in the religion class in first grade, they talked about how God loved all creatures and how we're supposed to love all creatures. And so I asked a nun, because even in first grade, I found it very strange that we ate animals. I said, if God loves all creatures, why are we eating them? Later, and told me that it was a necessary evil, and I I accepted that. I thought there was something magical in meat that we needed to survive. So I thought, well, that if I guess we have to eat meat. So for the next whatever almost 20 years, I continued eating meat and dairy, but I was sick a lot. I used to get flus all the time. I had severe stomach problems. I had bad acne. I was in pretty bad shape. I was going to the doctor a lot for all sorts of issues. And so I started living on Wayne State University, and or at least hanging out on Wayne State University. And I met a bunch of people who were vegetarians. They were always healthy and vibrant, and I was lethargic and tired and sick. So I asked them, I said, I want to become a vegetarian. This was back in the 80s, and there was no internet or anything. So I had to, ask them, where did you guys get information about? And I was skeptical. It's very skeptical because I was then, by that many years of eating meat and dairy, I was convinced that we needed the the magical the magical
Protein.
ingredient
Yep.
in meat, which is a myth. Um, so somebody said to me, "You got to meet our friend Felice. He's a vegan, and back then the word vegan was very rarely used and not even understood. I didn't even know what it meant. I found out it meant, you get rid of all animal products, even in your clothes and, hair care products and whatever, everything. You just don't use any animals. So I was intrigued by it. I'm like, wow, what a wonderful way to live without exploiting any animals. I'd like to do that. So I met with Felice, and I met him at the Community Conscience Series in Wayne State. And side note, Rob Tyner from the MC5 was running the kitchen out of there when I was there. It was I got to meet him. But Felice, I went up to him and I said, I'm interested in becoming a vegan, and I don't know anything about it. Can you help me with? Can I ask you like a million questions and go out to dinner with you and and pick your mind? And he said yes. So we started going to dinner at a little restaurant in Wayne State called Library Lounge, and we started getting stir fries. And um, he he was incredibly patient with me, and I asked all the typical questions that um, all these meat eaters ask me now. Where do you get your protein? How about a B12 deficiency? And isn't there something in meat that we need? And obviously we need dairy because that's where we get calcium. And he was incredibly patient with me, and just slowly just told me everything, gave me all the information. Back then there was just books, and he did turn me on to some really valuable books that I took to heart. And I said, no, I'm going to try it for 30 days. So I tried eliminating everything for 30 days, and I survived. And I was like, well, that wasn't that hard. So I then decided that, by my 25th birthday, I was 24 at the time, I'm going to become vegan. And that was about 8 months away. So I said, no, I've already quit beef and pork. So now I should have stopped then, but I was still honestly skeptical. So I decided to, no, I'm going to stop chicken. That happened real quick. And then Felice gave me some information on dairy, because I was one of those persons that said, I'll never quit eating dairy. I then eliminated dairy very soon after that. And the only thing I was eating up until January of that year was some fish. And then by my birthday was in March, where and I would have turned 25 on New Year's Day before my birthday. I just said, I can't do this anymore. I have to stop eating these animals. I was convinced by then because my health was getting so much better, even just by eliminating all the dairy and the chicken and all that. So I was completely vegan by the January of that year, and that's it's going to be 38 years ago this January. So that was my journey. And then Felice and I became best friends. He lived with me a few times, but the first time he lived with me, we started the Michigan Vegan Society, and I think that's about the time we met you, Scott. So then we were Felice and I were going to restaurants and eating, and then I got a job at a vegetarian restaurant, the Om Cafe. And, the rest is just, history then, as far as, we just continued talking to people after that, and continued learning about it, and continued researching it. And then when the internet came out, it became so much easier for, as far as information goes, in some ways. And there's also a ton of misinformation on the internet too, but the truth always stands out. So I hope that
Yeah,
helps.
so you were both really forerunners of the movement. I mean, when you started, there weren't many vegans out there, which now
No.
it's more common now. So, and now Felice, you're writing a book on veganism, which I find interesting, and you had some very interesting insights, particularly into some of the ancient civilizations. You know, and you, as you said, the Bible does say eat plants. I mean, that was so. But why now does everyone eat animals? I mean, how did that happen? And what's the connection between eating animals? And you mentioned before on like there's some kind of like the demonic is attracted to animal eating. Maybe you can clarify that.
Sure. Like I said, the very first dietary scriptures in Genesis 1:29 says we are to eat plants. But later on in Genesis 9, uh, scriptures 2 to 4, it says, not only now are we allowed to eat flesh, but we're also allowed to impose fear and dread on other animals. So we go from moving from Genesis 1:29, where not, in Genesis 1:29 and 1:30, it says not only humans, but all other animals are supposed to eat plants as well. But anyway, there's a big change in Genesis 9, and that points out like a contradiction. And does God change and does divinity change its mind? We have Moses, a prophet, telling us one thing, and then all of a sudden somebody else is saying that he said something different. The divine does not change its mind. It's corrupt humans who change the scriptures, and of course the scriptures have been falsified, just like in the case of Jesus. Jesus was absolutely against eating flesh, which he demonstrated by overturning the tables of the money changers in the temple because they were selling animals to be sacrificed in the temple. He came to fulfill, not destroy, the original dietary scripture in Genesis 129. We have this nonsense about he died for our sins, and nonsense. He died because he was executed because he was against the meat industry. That's why.
Yeah, that's very interesting because I mean he was an Essene, and the Essenes were vegetarian, and it seems like many of the early Christians were also vegetarian and vegan. The Cathars were obviously a vegetarian society. So was there ever a society, pre-Christian that was primarily vegan or vegetarian?
Yeah, the
Oh
Essenes.
well,
Yeah, before
yeah.
like the Essenes, but you also have the maybe the Vedic civilizations. So
Well,
go ahead.
there were a number of them.
Yeah.
The Pelestogens, right? I'm not even pronouncing that correctly, but there were a number of vegan groups who, people who understood that we're not supposed to harm or, oppress, enslave, or slaughter other creatures. It's just a moral thing, because anybody who eats animal food is automatically, even if you're just eating like dairy, they kill the male calves in dairy farms because they're not going to be producing milk. So they actually the dairy industry is also involved with killing creatures. So it's just moral common sense not to eat any animal foods or not to support the oppression, enslavement, and slaughter of other animals so we can eat animal foods.
Mhm. I find it interesting just talking spiritually. So I spent a lot of time in the Middle East, but a lot of the Middle East occultists, when you really get to talk to them, get to know them, these are like the Sufis and all that. A lot of them, especially when they're doing a magical working, they won't eat any. They can't eat any animal product at all. And their theory is, if you eat an animal product and you're traveling in the spiritual realms, like maybe the astral plane, you appear as an animal because it's the
Yeah,
vibration. And I think
yeah, you
that's
get
what really,
reincarnated.
yeah. So in other words, I think that's what really drew me to veganism when I was, well, vegetarianism at the time when I was in high school. Swami Satchidananda, you remember him? Beyond Words.
Oh yeah.
So I was in high school. I read that, and it really affected me because it was the first time I actually come across the concept of the food that you eat creates a certain vibration. And I remember him. It was beautiful how he said that. If you're a vegetarian, animals can sense your vibration and they'll come toward you. And I found that's true. And you can always tell a heavy meat eater because they have that heavy sort of animal vibe with them. And it takes a lot of time to clean out. So, but I think spiritually, if you agree, there's practically every spiritual path. Maybe the Tibetans are the exception. They require a vegetarian diet, right?
Well, that would make sense because everything is vibration.
Right.
Eating, I mean, death is,
Yep.
slaughter and killing is a low vibration. To reach nirvana is like a lot of the yogis say, you can't eat meat. It lowers your vibration. So you want to raise your vibration as much as possible. So everything is, vibration. So if you are eating meat, you can still meditate and all this, whatever, but you're going to advance quicker spiritually by having a strict, clean diet. It's a
Right.
higher vibration.
Right. And I would say most spiritual teachers do advocate this, right? But then you get the
Some do,
opposite,
but yeah, some
right?
don't.
Some don't. You're right. It's true. You go into the Wicca movement, the witchcraft movement. They're all about eating meat and
Yeah.
doing whatever. And sometimes you can see the fruits of them because they're always fighting and they're not a very peaceful group. Uh, and then you get the what do you call it? The opposite of the Vedic vegetarian civilization was like the Aztec, which was not only the eating meat but they're sacrificing humans. But I feel like now the United States is almost becoming like that. We got the keto diet, so this is promoted by the mainstream press is like basically eating meat only practically, right, to lose weight and to look good or whatever that means. And you get these mass sacrifices happening, people get genocides happening in Palestine, war machine killing people. So I want to get your ideas of like we seem like we're moving in the wrong direction as a culture. How do we change that? So I'd like to hear your opinions.
Felice, do you want to take that or?
Well, like I said, the very first dietary scripture says we're to eat plants. Now, the only way that you can defy that is if you say that divinity changed its mind. If you believe that God is omniscient and all-knowing, then God does not change its mind. It's humans who have made the changes to the scriptures. So that said, if the first scripture said we were able to eat meat, well, that would be a whole different thing. But it doesn't. It says we are to eat plants only. So that's like a gigantic statement, and anything that contradicts that should be seen as evil.
Right.
And
And of
then
course,
if you want me to add something,
sure.
how
Yeah,
can
by
we
all
change
means.
that? Was your question? Um, I would say that we just be an example and be compassionate about where people are and understand that they have cultural and all sorts of information that's false, and it's sometimes very hard to get through. So when I first became vegan, I was very in your face, and I was, uh, I thought, why isn't everyone vegan? And I was angry. I was an angry vegan, and I see a lot of that today, and that's not helping. That's actually incredibly counterproductive, in
It's
my
not
opinion.
helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I
It is
started.
counterproductive, and
Yeah.
we're conditioned. We're conditioned by the schools and by our religions to not be vegan. So that's
Oh,
that's a lot of
absolutely.
conditioning.
So
Yeah,
that's a lot of problem with a lot of people who think, well, but it's okay in the Bible, or it's okay with my religion, or this it's tradition. This is how our family ate, and this and that. But I find that over the years, I mean, Fleach and I have helped hundreds of people switch to a vegan diet, and it's generally from how he approached it with me, gentle, compassionate, and meeting me where I'm at, and made me confident to move forward with it. And unfortunately, a lot of people don't care about the animals, so I had to
Yeah.
um, address it as far as like your health. And actually, that's how I thought it was horrible eating animals, but my health was bad, and that was one of the reasons I started becoming a vegetarian or a vegan. So I try to just meet people where they're at, and then I find that people come up to me and ask me questions, and they ask me, you're a vegan, so what should I do and what should I buy? Is it hard? This and that, So I take the time and explain stuff to them. But I've been kicked out of vegetarian and vegan groups on Facebook just because I tell people to learn and take your time. And to me, any amount of meat or dairy that you stop consuming is a win for the animals. So if I can get somebody even to eat less
exactly.
meat, that's a win.
Right.
Would I like them to completely quit eating meat? Absolutely, but it isn't going to happen overnight, and that's what some people don't grasp. Then you hear people say, "Well, what are we going to do with all the cows?" Well, it's going to be a transitional society.
Right.
People are, and it's already happening now. There's actually less farms. There's less dairy farms. I mean, it's already in decline.
Mhm.
Um, so that is my approach in how to try to continue this movement. This movement has come in and out of society for hundreds of years. There's been vegetarians, and at times they peak, and at times it goes down. But we as true activists and true friends of the animals will never stop. Trying to let people know that you don't have to eat animals. It's just completely unnecessary.
Absolutely.
Now, Felice, you said something 30 years ago that always stuck with me. You said that you were involved in sort of social justice and activism, um, and and your point was, how can you be involved in social justice and activism if you're still eating meat, right? Maybe you can
Or,
elaborate on
or
that a bit.
yeah, or environmentalism.
Right, environmentalism, true. Hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Right. Because if you're eating animal foods, you're supporting the oppression, enslavement, and the slaughter of other creatures. And loving your neighbor as yourself, we should see other creatures as our neighbors as well, not just humans. Well, that's the folly of the word called speciesism. Not the it's not the word isn't folly. The word is has to do with humans believing they're above other creatures. So one of the falsest scriptures that we have is in Genesis 1:26 to 28, which says that humans have the right to subdue the earth and and have dominion over other creatures. That's absolute nonsense. And that false scripture was put there by cattle raisers particularly to counter Genesis 1:29, which says we are to eat plants only. That scripture was put there saying, well, we can subdue the earth and dominate, so that means we can eat flesh and do what we want to the animals. No, absolutely not. It does not really contradict that. We should listen to that. We are to eat plants only and stick with that.
Wow. Just to add another thing, another something that stuck with me that Felice told me probably years ago, 2 decades ago, um, was go on, go on. I'll get it together in a second. But yeah, go on.
So,
I'm passing.
yeah, no problem.
My thoughts are confused. I don't want to. Go ahead.
Yeah, so yeah, social justice. One second.
Can
Yeah,
I add
so
one more thing here? Can I add
no,
one more
absolutely.
thing?
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah. Okay. In the Central and South America, one of the avatars there, the is said to have said that, to condemn animal sacrifice is to condemn human sacrifices, right, of the Aztecs.
Right.
But then when I lived in South America for a while, it turns out that he actually condemned all sacrifices, including of animals.
Who was
And
that?
but yeah, let's see, that it's really a cool name.
One of their
The most
deities?
famous avatar of Central and South America. What's that guy's name? Shit, I forgot it right now.
Quetzalcoatl?
Quetzalcoatl, exactly. That's
Quetzalcoatl,
him.
yeah.
Yeah,
I
like I said,
bust an
when I was in
accent. I
the
don't
United
pronounce things
States,
right. Mhm.
when I was in the United States and read about him, it said that
Yeah.
he was against human sacrifices, but he allowed animal sacrifices. But then I lived in South America for a year, and absolutely not. It says in their documents there in Central and South America that he was against animal sacrifices as well. So the animal foods industry is very powerful, and they'll influence the way things are taught.
Do you think it's human, or you think maybe it is some kind of, I would say, spiritual, not spiritual, but maybe some kind of otherworldly influence? Because we do have a lot of religions now still practice sacrifice, including Judaism. They're getting ready. They want to put the second temple in and
Yeah,
sacrifice the red
yeah.
heifers.
They want to start sacrificing animals in the temple. At least
Right.
they were honest in doing that. But but Judaism should look at their very first scripture. If you believe in a God who changes its mind, when you're not believing
Right.
really in a God, you're believing in something satanic. And the very first dietary
Yeah.
scripture says we are to eat plants.
And then
So it's just
yeah.
absolutely nonsense
Mhm.
for Jews to say that God permitted. God changed his mind and later says it's okay. Well, what kind of a? It's not obviously not an all-knowing or omniscient God if it changed its mind, right? That
Yeah.
contradicts the whole notion of God being all-knowing and omniscient.
And
Yeah. And then
with that thought, I
sorry.
remember what I was
Go
going to
ahead.
say before I got distracted by somebody trying to call me. Um, Felice said to me years ago that the Bible has been rewritten, edited.
Mhm.
There's truth in the Bible and there's BS in the Bible. And he told me, he said, to find the truth in the Bible, all you have to do is look for everything that's based on love and compassion and equality. That's the truth. Everything
Right.
else was added by man and is complete
Yep,
BS.
absolutely,
So that stuck with
absolutely.
me so hard for all these years. I never forgot that when he told me that.
Yeah. But yeah, sacrifice is almost in every religion still. Even in Brooklyn a couple of weeks ago, they had Capros, which is the another Jewish festival where they take chickens and they rub them over the head and beat them to death. To take their sins away. And literally there are thousands of chickens being sold and then just smashed to
Oh,
death. There's blood
such
everywhere.
awesome, so awesome.
Islam
One
still
good thing though is that
Mhm.
some of the Eastern religions, like this one guy who is a Zen teacher.
Mhm.
No, he was a Buddhist, and he said, "Well, if Buddha said, 'May all creatures be happy,' obviously I became a vegan." He says, "Because if I'm eating creatures, they're obviously not very happy, being oppressed and slaughtered in
Right.
order for him to be eaten." So this is so it was really cool to see a Buddhist saying that.
Yeah. I think a good rule of thumb, if some deity requires you to sacrifice something, you probably want to leave the room.
Question that deity.
Walk
Yeah,
away.
it's
you know.
demonic,
Right.
right? It's
Right.
demonic to do that.
Yep.
Exactly. So, and you mentioned this before that the meat eating actually does attract demonic entities, correct? And the smell of burnt
Well, yeah,
flesh.
and it's that, and
Hmm.
people who eat animal foods are succumbing to the demonic influence, because if they weren't, they would want to be all loving towards all creatures. That's a logical thing, right? We say God is all loving, and so if God is all loving, aren't we supposed to imitate our Creator? Well, we're not doing that if we eat animal foods.
And that goes back to vibration. How negativity is attracted to negativity.
Right.
Yep,
So
absolutely.
if your energy is negative and your vibration is low, you attract negative things.
Hmm. So, what do you both think of the growth of keto, which is sort of like an sort of growth out of the Atkins diet, which is basically a meat based diet. Even my son thinks it's the greatest thing. You know, where you're basically eating only animal products. You know, with a
I,
few
yeah,
vegetables
I
thrown
had
in.
two people I knew very well that both died from a keto diet. One person was somebody that always told me how awful it was that I was vegan and I'm going to get sick, and he couldn't believe I was vegan for so long. He thought I was cheating. I'm just like, why would I cheat? You know. But he went on a keto diet. He told me how great he felt for a couple months, and then he died of colon cancer.
Yeah,
And then I had somebody who was in my family as well, who originally it was originally called the Atkins diet, and then she went on the Atkins diet, and then she continued with the keto diet when they changed it, but she it destroyed her kidneys. She was on
yeah,
dialysis, and it took her out. And those are just two people I know that went on the keto diet.
yeah.
I don't know anyone that did it successfully, and I hear a lot of people obviously start getting real sick and they stop doing it. Uh, the is it worth weight loss? Which the one person in my family was doing it for weight loss.
Mm,
Is it worth killing yourself and not to mention killing all the animals for to lose a few pounds when there's more humane ways to do that?
right,
It's
Exactly.
unbelievable. It's absolutely, the keto diet is disgusting,
right.
and uh, and is definitely a boom to the Pharmaceutical and Medical Association.
Oh yeah,
You know,
yeah.
even
Mhm.
medical professionals say that cholesterol is bad for us and what contains cholesterol, animal foods. If
Right.
you eat flesh, know this is true. Cholesterol karma is coming for you.
As well,
Yeah,
I think in the keto diet, it's not what you eat, but what you don't eat. So they stop eating carbs, simple carbs, which causes the sort of immediate weight loss. But then after about
yep.
a year, their lab tests go crazy, and they end up getting
And
worse. Um, so speaking of health, now Felicia, you're 86 years old.
Yeah.
You look great. You have long beard, long hair. Actually, my hair is a little bit grayer than yours. Um, but this is, I
and
mean,
he
you look,
doesn't use any dye or anything. That's his natural color.
and that's from, I
Yeah.
mean, you're a living testament of the power of the vegan diet. Walk us through it, like a typical day, like what do you eat and what do you advocate people eat, like for breakfast, lunch, and mm,
Oh, I see what you mean. Well,
yeah.
right now my the refrigerator I have is packed with organic smoothie,
Oh,
organic carrot juice, a
hmm,
whole bunch of organic uh, hummus.
oh, nice.
Uh, yeah, and so just I try to be not just vegan, but I'm trying to be like organic and vegan at the same time.
Yeah.
Because I don't want pesticides on my food. Pesticide, besides being bad for you when you ingest them, all pesticides also kill insects and other small creatures. So
Mm,
if you're eating, people who are vegan should also try to be organic vegan so that they're not responsible for the deaths of insects and other small animals that are killed by pesticides.
And it also kills the workers picking the vegetables and fruit.
Yeah, you're
mm,
damn right
Yeah,
it does.
they have an incredibly high rate of cancers and
Yep,
lymphoma and all sorts
exactly.
of horrible diseases, miscarriages, and that's on the pesticide farms.
mm.
So, people used to say to me, well, avocados or bananas are okay if they're not organic. I'm just like, well, how about for the pickers?
Right, right.
It's not
Exactly.
okay for them, and it's killing them. So,
Right.
and like Felice said, it still is killing the critters and the bugs and the bees and everything else too. That's part of our ecosystem. So, and then
And
did you want to know my day for
yeah, I was
eating
about to
too?
ask
Or?
that. Yeah, what do you recommend and what do you do on a
Well,
day?
generally in the morning, I wake up, I have a smoothie,
Nice.
and it is organic. I use flax milk as a base, and I
Mm,
use generally a lot of blueberries and mango, and I do add in chlorella. I add a little bit of turmeric in it.
mm,
Um, Moringa powder I put in it. Um, Maca I put. I put in quite a few things. I put in a multiple vitamin into it too, and some vitamin C, and it's an excellent smoothie. And then I also have either a little bit of oatmeal or some organic cereal. Obviously, everything I try to eat everything organic.
Yeah.
And then lunch and that really holds me for hours. And then lunch I'll have something really small like just like a some organic hummus sandwich or something.
Mm.
And then dinner, because I own a business, it's I fortunately I have a vegan little carry out place by my house that I go to multiple times. They have cut stuffed cabbage rolls
Oh, nice.
and
Yeah.
squash and all sorts of great vegan sandwiches.
Mm.
And then Zerbos, which is in Livonia by where I live in Michigan here, has just all sorts of great grab and go stuff that's almost all organic.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, I steam a lot of vegetables. I make organic rice. Unfortunately, I became gluten free, so it's even more of a challenge
Oh, you did?
to eat.
Okay. Yeah.
I used to be able to, I was so excited, for a while there because all these restaurants started having vegan portions of their menu.
Mm.
So, but now it's like when I became vegan, there was almost nothing on the menu for me to eat. There's this whole section of vegan stuff and maybe one or two things that are gluten free.
Right.
But I'm
Right.
just grateful. I'm just grateful to be able to eat the gluten free stuff.
Yeah.
I'm not a celiac, but I have an intolerance where it causes rashes.
Oh boy.
Um,
Hmm.
and from what I understand, that's the wheat in America. I have
Right.
friends that went to Italy that ate pasta and bread and thought they were cured and came
Right.
back to America to find out they weren't. And they got incredibly sick when they got home thinking that they could eat bread and pasta again. So it's
Wow.
from what I understand, Europe uses a different part of the chaff on the wheat than we do.
Right.
And so the chaff we use is much higher in gluten, and that will trigger people with any sort of gluten intolerance to
Mm.
just keep getting worse and worse and worse. I went to doctors for years and natural healers for years, and nobody could ever figure out what was wrong with me.
Mm.
So I finally contacted a medical intuitive in another state, and she figured it out. And within 2 months, all my rashes went away, and
Wow.
I've been gluten free now for probably about 8 years. And
Yeah.
man, I feel so much better. I mean, I felt great being vegan, but having rashes and eating gluten, because you know, a lot of vegans will eat a lot more bread, and a
It's
lot of the
true.
vegan stuff is pure gluten.
Yep.
The fake chicken, the fake beef, whatever, it's pure gluten. I loved all that stuff.
Yeah.
I was eating way too much of it.
The Gardein
So,
stuff is good. Yeah.
I'm kind of grateful my body told me
Yeah.
stop. I wish I would have figured out what it told me what I was
Yeah.
supposed to stop. But it took me quite a few years to figure that out. But I did stop, and when I stopped, everything went away, and
Mm.
I didn't have all the rashes.
It
Which
could
was
be
great. So
glyphosate too. Yeah.
that's the only thing I've really encountered in
Mm.
almost 38 years as
Wow.
far as health problems was just I couldn't
Yeah.
figure out where this rash was coming from.
Hmm.
So, but it
Wow.
wasn't from the vegan diet; it was
That's
from
right.
gluten.
Hmm. Yeah. There's a lot of good. Some of it is junk food. Because my guilty pleasure once or twice a week is that plant burger place they have in Whole Foods with those fake cheeseburgers. Not fake, but they're good. The fish,
Well,
but
the
it's
Beyond has really upped their game as far as like ingredients.
yeah, they did
The Beyond
avocado
burgers
oil. Yep.
yeah, they're using avocado oil. They're so much
Yep.
healthier than they used to be. The Impossible Burger is awful.
Yeah.
I don't even. I personally, I don't want to eat that at all. And
Right.
then
Right.
a lot of people also wonder why do we eat products that look like the products meat
Right.
products, which is to me
Yeah.
in when I think about it, it's a very strange question. The, their product doesn't look like a cow or a pig.
Right.
They
Right.
form it into a little round patty or a little
Yeah.
stick.
Yep.
So their product already doesn't look like you
Right.
know what they're eating.
Yep.
Um, so I always say, people, do you have a patent on shapes? Because
Right.
that's all it is. It's just a
Yeah.
round patty.
Yeah.
And they're so upset at that. They're so
Yeah.
upset that we have sausages that look meat like, but that sausage doesn't look like the pig. You
Right.
know,
Yeah.
they make sure anything that they eat doesn't look like the animal. So
Correct.
why are you telling me, why do you make your food look like our food? No, I'm not. Your food
Yeah.
already doesn't look like the animal you're eating, and I wouldn't want it to.
Yeah.
So,
There's a restaurant here in DC called New Vegan, and it's a vegan soul food restaurant, and really one of the best restaurants I've been to. But they have these. I mean, it's technically it's like a fried chicken, but much better than real chicken. But it's the sauces, and I mean, we would never miss any meat after eating some of that stuff. They have
oh,
so, I mean, it's just
I never have ever since I
yeah,
quit eating meat. I've
No,
never, and people,
absolutely not.
yeah,
Absolutely not.
yep. I mean,
I
it's
was I was told one time, like by this person who knew I was vegan. I said, "Oh, I bet you would love a delicious steak." And I said,
right,
"My God, I'm absolutely repulsed by even the
right,
notion." You know,
yep,
yep.
yeah,
And people, and for the first few years I was vegan, people always, oh, don't you crave this? Don't you crave
yeah,
that?
exactly,
And honestly, for the first few months, I absolutely did.
right,
Because it is an addiction. It's like somebody who's got a heroin or cocaine addiction. They crave that crap for
right,
quite a few months or sometimes years after, but it works out of your system,
right,
and you don't crave it anymore. And I remember going to barbecues, smelling burnt flesh, thinking it smelled good because my
right,
mind was convinced it was food. So once I realized, told my mind it wasn't food, and I started smelling the burnt flesh,
yeah.
it was
yeah,
It's not good.
it
Yeah,
was disgusting.
yep.
it is disgusting. Yeah,
But I think a lot of it is the sauces. I mean, are like the barbecue sauce. I mean, that's what
Yep,
people are tasting. They're not tasting it covers
exactly.
covers
Just
the
like ribs.
taste of the
Yeah,
burnt flesh. That's the thing.
people say they love ribs. They don't love ribs. They
They love
love
the
barbecue
sauce.
sauce.
Right. Exactly. Which New Vegan proved because they have great sauces, and it's much better because you
Yeah,
don't get that
you like
horrible meat
it. Yep,
taste. Of course,
yep.
it's not something you want to eat every day because it is a bit sugary, but yeah. So I generally I eat a lot of tofu still. That's my sort of go-to
Me
raw
too.
tofu. Um, just yeah, I eat that in a salad. But yeah, but it's but and again, I'll tell you, I should explain too when I decided to become vegan again, and this is like a spiritual thing. Health issues, of course, that's always an issue. That's always part of it. But what I noticed, as someone who meditates every day, um, when I actually became vegan again, like, and I said, I'm going to cut all like every single thing that comes from plants out of my diet. I started dreaming like you wouldn't believe, and I realized like it lightened me, right? And I
Yep.
noticed before and after, and I think that's what got me. I said, I want this all the time, and people don't understand. Like as a vegan, you actually feel sort of high all the time, right?
Yep.
I mean, it's
I
a
feel
spiritual
content on a
high.
regular basis. Yep,
What was that? Yeah,
I feel content on a regular
content,
basis.
right? Contentment, and
Exactly.
because you're not killing anything, any animal. You're living without that karma of the dead animal. And plus, the vibration is pure. So I was having these crazy dreams, very spiritual dreams. And I said, I got to keep this up. And I noticed, I mean, and that's one of the reasons why I actually, and it's hard sometimes, especially when I'm out working, because, a lot of times you go in restaurants like a diner, I'll be with friends or something, and there's absolutely nothing on the menu. I said, well, I'll have a grilled cheese. Well, I don't eat grilled cheese. What do you do? So I have a coffee, and I bring my own, non-dairy creamer that I put in. But I mean, you know, but it's worth it because you do have this
Yes, it
vibration.
is.
Um,
Yep, absolutely.
and I realize that spiritual practices are much easier when you're vegan, and I feel like you know, so that's all.
I totally agree. Yeah, it absolutely is.
I
It's
agree with that too. I
Yeah,
remember the first time that I tried veganism, I said, well, okay, I'll try it for like 5 days and see what happens.
right,
So I tried it for 5 days and then I realized one thing that, wow, I don't seem to have the depressions
right,
cycles
yeah,
that I had before. And then I, made the connection. Well, if I'm supporting animals being enslaved and slaughtered and oppressed in order to eat animal foods. Don't I deserve that karma? That's where that depression was coming from.
Right.
Bad foods lead to bad moods. It's just logical karma.
And I think that was also when Swami Satyananda's book way back when. When you eat an animal, you're eating that fear, you're eating that
Yep,
adrenaline, you're
exactly.
eating, and that stays with you. And I think that a lot of people who are depressed, I think they're that is part of their problem. I mean, you're eating the
Yep.
fear of an animal, you're eating their at some point karma. It's not spiritually beneficial. I think it was Sri, was it Swami I'm sorry, Goswami Kriyananda. He was a teacher actually out of Chicago, but he would say that if you really want to if you're living an experience you want to like implant it in your body, right? He said eat meat because that will do it. It connects you to the sort of physical realm. But if you want to be spiritual and be ethereal and not be sort of in the spiritual realm, then become vegan, and that was it. So
Oh,
yeah, so you have
good.
all these people who are, enmeshing themselves in the karma of the animals, enmeshing themselves in the karma of the world. But a way to disengage, I believe, is vegan. And
Can,
Absolutely.
can,
yeah,
can I, you're in New York, right?
no, right now I'm in
Or are you in Philly?
Virginia.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah,
yeah, are you familiar with KRS-One from Boogie Down Productions, the rapper?
yeah, 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 yeah.
Okay. Did you ever hear his song Beef?
No, I've not,
Okay.
but I will play it.
Back in the
KRS-One.
early 80s or 90s, he put out a song that
Uh
called Beef, and it was absolutely everything that we're talking about.
huh.
And part of the lyrics is, I have it right here. Here it is. And here it is. The cow doesn't grow fast enough for man, so through his greed, he makes a faster plan. He has drugs to make the cow grow quicker. Through the stress, the cow gets sicker. 21 different drugs are pumped into the cow in one big lump. So just before it dies, it cries in a slaughterhouse full of germs and flies. Off with the head, they pack it, drain it, and cart it. And there it is in your local supermarket. Red and bloody, a corpse neatly packed. And you wonder about heart attacks? Come on now, man, let's be real. You are what you eat, is the way I feel, but the Food and Drug Administration will tell you meat is a perfect combination. See, the cows live under fear and stress, trying to think what's going to happen next. Fear and stress become part of you in your cells and blood. This is true. So when the cow is killed, believe it, you preserve those cells, you freeze it, thaw it out with the blood and season it. Then you sit down and begin eating it. In your body, its structure becomes your structure, all the fear and stress of another. Any drug is addictive by any name, even drugs and meat, they are the same. The FDA has America strung out on drugs and beef, no doubt. And there's a lot more lyrics, but that fit
Wow,
into
Wow,
what
that's
we were
great.
just talking
What
that's
a
about.
great.
great poem.
Hmm.
That's excellent.
Yeah,
But you can just Google that. You can Google the lyrics,
KRS-One.
just look up KRS-One beef lyrics.
Very
And he
cool.
has two songs
Huh.
about it, and this
He,
one's
he's
just simply
obviously
called Beef.
he's obviously vegan.
Oh yeah, he's been
Yeah, yeah,
vegan
definitely. Yeah,
as probably as long as we have.
and
And and he wrote another one called Squash All Beef, which is also incredible.
hmm, that's great. Are you familiar with John Joseph from the Cro-Mags? Sort of a punk rock singer who he was vegan, became a member of ISKCON, the Hare Krishnas.
I do remember, but I never
Yeah,
researched him too deeply,
yeah,
and I've heard about him and his veganism.
yeah. He's a New Yorker. Of course, his famous book, which I'd highly recommend, is called "Meat Is for Pussies," because he's an Iron Man. He's a triathlete. He's in his 60s, and he runs. Whatever. 12 miles a day, bikes 26 miles a day, he's swimming. All on a vegan diet. So
And that's
really good
another thing.
guy.
Think
I
it's
belong to these Facebook groups about vegan athletes and vegan weightlifters,
Hmm.
and
yeah.
they hold world records.
Right.
They're some of the strongest people in the world. I think it's hilarious when people say vegans are weak and,
Right.
skinny and this and that. And I always refer him to the my friend, his name's Jeff Palmer on Facebook.
Mhm.
I said, check out this guy's page, and all his friends, they're all vegans who are weightlifters, and
Yeah.
then look up weightlifting records and vegan, and you'll see all these vegans that hold weightlifting records and triathletes and et cetera,
Exactly.
et cetera. So that the whole vegan myth of us being strong and, I mean, weak and petite or whatever is ridiculous
Right.
and complete propaganda.
Right.
It's quite the opposite. You if you're going to fill yourself up with dairy and meat, you're going to become lethargic, and you're not going
Right.
to be the man you think you are. Believe me.
Yep. Well, now the big insult, everyone says, "Oh, he's a soy boy." you know, that's
Yeah, and
you know,
somebody said that to me on Facebook recently, and I just chimed back and said, "Is that supposed to be an insult?"
right. Yeah, I do eat soy.
And
Yeah,
then they didn't answer back. But I'm just like,
right.
I don't consider that an insult. So I just said, if I'm a soy boy, you're a meathead. So uh,
Well, because the whole theory is, this is all the propaganda. Like if you eat soy, then it creates estrogen in your body, but you'd have to eat so much soy that it's physically impossible. You know.
no, they used to say if you eat a bunch of soy,
Yeah.
your breasts will grow. I'm just like,
Right. Right.
I'm like, Sweet Chene and I would have the largest breast right now of anybody if that was absolutely true. So the amount of tofu we've eaten over the last 30, 40, 50 years, 50 years for him, 38 years for me. It's just, it's hilarious the things they come up
Yeah.
with. And then they say things like, well, all the or growing the vegetables destroys animals I'm
All
like,
right.
you have to remind them that most of that produce, most of that food is being produced for animal agriculture.
Right.
They always
Like
forget
corn.
that part.
Right.
And there are more humane ways to produce our food, but to say that all growing vegetables and fruit kills animals and habitats too, they don't realize that a huge percentage goes toward animal culture agriculture to feed them.
Right.
So that's an irrelevant argument, and it just that every argument, Fleet and I know this. We had to deal with these arguments when we started the Michigan Vegan Society. It was like what 37, 36 years ago we started the Michigan Vegan Society, and we had all this information back then. So nothing has changed. And
Right.
one of our spiritual leaders that we really helped us out was the book Diet for a New America by John Robbins,
Yeah.
Exactly. Great book.
which
That's a great book.
absolutely blew our
Right.
minds because it was everything we believed, but he had all the research and all the studies.
Yep.
And this it came out, I think, what in the early '90s, Felice, like
Yeah.
92, 93. And to this
It's
day,
still a classic. It's a great book.
it's a relevant part of it should be a relevant part of any vegan's library because it's so full of information. And there's one of the best stories in it is when John Robbins was doing research. I don't know if your listeners know about John Robbins. He was supposed to inherit the Baskin Robbins fortune, and he rejected it because he didn't want anything to do with the Meat and Dairy Association. So he walked away from a mansion and a pool shaped like an ice cream cone and everything, and went off to this remote little island and with his wife and kids and wrote this book and did research. And what came out of it was amazing. And it is a book that every person really should have, and it's a
It's a
great
classic.
reference book, but it's a great read. And one of the great stories in it was when he was doing research. He was very gentle. He met people where they were. He met a pig farmer, and he asked a pig farmer, told him that he was doing a book about animal agriculture, and uh, and he wanted to stay with him for a while and just observe. The farmer let him stay for a while, and he observed all the stuff. He took notes. And after his stay there, he left and he went home and finished the book, and then he sent the pig farmer a copy of the book. And then a few months later, John Robbins called him, and obviously the farmer was incredibly upset about what he was doing. He was outraged that John Robbins came here to try to destroy his business. But when John Robbins called him, he said, I was outraged. I couldn't believe that, what you wrote about me and my business. I'm paraphrasing, obviously. So but he said, I read the book. And he said, I was so moved. This guy sold his pig farm.
Yeah.
And did he
Great
sell it?
story.
No, he actually kept it. I apologize. He kept it, but he got rid of most of the pigs. He didn't. He stopped slaughtering, and he created a pig petting
Oh
zoo, and
wow.
he associated it with all the schools, so the schools
Yeah.
could come and see the pigs and appreciate the pigs for being alive,
Mhm.
not a piece of bacon. Um,
Mhm.
so I mean, there's so many great stories in it, and so many great references, and so much great research from around the world. That's where we got a lot of our original information. And like I said, this information's been out there for decades, and a lot of it is from well-known universities. A lot of the research, it's
Mhm.
not biased research. It's some odd reason the biased research ends up on the news because the Meat and Dairy Association will do research. They'll
Mhm.
give it to news stations like it's a news story, and they'll repeat it without fact checking,
Right.
telling us, I remember as a child, we needed to drink 3 glasses of milk a day.
Yep.
That ended up being a disaster. But that was the Meat and Dairy Association. When I was a kid, they had the, the, the food charts, and they were literally supplied by the Dairy Association. So, of course, on top of the
Mhm.
food chart was meat and dairy.
Right.
So that's what you're supposed to eat most of. So that was the beginning of the propaganda when I was going to grade school in the early '60s. I don't know if they had those charts when Felice was in grade school, but they did when I was, and so that made us
John.
all think, well, that this must be the healthiest stuff, and vegetables and fruit were at the bottom.
Right. John, relative to that, I got hooked on milk when I heard that the milk was so healthy for you. So I remember thinking I'm going to drink as much milk as I can, and so I did while I was a freshman in college, and I just farted my brains out because of all the gas that the dairy produced. I just farted and farted and farted and farted, and finally I realized, my God, it's the fucking milk that's doing that.
Good times.
Yep. Not meant for human consumption. Exactly.
You know,
But
I always tell people it's the absolute perfect food for baby cows.
for baby cows, right? Yeah. So, but so
Not your mom, not your milk.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so Felice, when is your book coming out?
Oh, the I haven't actually put it together as such. I just been putting most of the information on Facebook.
You
Um,
have okay. Oh, Facebook. So what is your? I'll have to become friends with them. How do people reach out to you if they want information or through Facebook?
yeah,
Okay.
that's fine.
Under okay, I'll put your information then in the information. And John, but you still have that information that organization though, right? That so if someone
The
wants to
Michigan Vegan Society?
yeah,
No, it disbanded
this band, okay.
back in the '90s because
Right.
we literally no one knew what the word vegan meant. We kept doing environmental shows and
Hmm.
different events, but
Right.
we spent most of our time explaining what the word vegan meant, and everyone just
Hmm.
shook their head. And so, I mean, we probably had 15, 20 people that joined our organization. It was pretty much a full-time job, so it was really hard.
Yeah.
So we had to just, we had to, I just never refiled for it, so it
Yeah.
went away. And then fortunately, was the Michigan, not the Michigan Vegan Society, whatever what they were called before that. Soon after that, another vegan vegetarian society,
Sure.
when the internet came about with Jim Cochran. You remember Jim Felice, and
Yeah.
he started that group, and then now it's what is it? What is the Michigan Vegan? I think it's not the Michigan Vegan Society. I forget the name of it, but they took it over and they did a great job, and they have tons of members. And VegMish,
Hmm.
VEGMICH,
That's good. Yeah.
VegMish. Um, they do a great job. I love them, and I'm a member of them, and
Yeah.
So I support them. But no, the Michigan Vegan Society is defunct. But I still am a member of the American Vegan Society, which Jay Dinshaw started, I think back in the 50s. And he was one of my inspirations to start the Michigan Vegan Society. And I talked to him frequently on the phone when we were starting it. And one of the things he told me was, do not use that word vegan because you won't, nobody knows what it is. And this was back in the mid 80s.
Yeah.
And I was arrogant. And I said, well, that's what I want. So I'm going to use the
Right.
word vegan. And you know what? He was right. So he was right. I probably should have just called it the Michigan Vegetarian Society or something,
Yeah.
because that wouldn't have had to spend half our time explaining the word. But nonetheless, we met a lot of people, we made a lot of contacts, and we did make a lot of people think. And we remained active in the following groups as well. And I continued doing outreach and doing tabling for animal rights and veganism even at bars back in the 80s. So
Yeah.
bars would let me set up pamphlet tables, and we would do that, and we would do that anywhere anyone would let us. I mean, that was, so we constantly talked to people. And Felice is like, the forebearer or the founder of veganism in Michigan.
Yeah.
um, and
Well, about
he
that,
he
you're
influenced,
right in there, John.
well, you influenced me, and Felice and I guess influenced you, Scott. So it's just and that's just a small little circle right here.
Yeah.
I know so many other people that constantly are still a vegan, and from 10, 15, 20 years ago, from when they asked me originally about, what's this all about, and I think killing animals is horrible, but I thought we needed to eat them. And so you just have to be patient with people, as circling back to where we started earlier.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Yeah, don't never hate people. Just you can hate non-vegan
hate the
actions,
sin.
but don't hate
Yeah. Of course.
non-vegans. I don't hate anybody. I hate vegans. I hate actions that hurt animals, but I don't hate the people who do that.
Yeah.
Because I was that way one time myself.
Yeah.
If I
As
hadn't
was I.
come across people like you and others, to influence me in a better way, that's just the way it is.
Yeah. I think the positive thing, there's a lot of young people who are turning to veganism. A lot of the millennials, they call them, a lot, so it's good that, people like you are sort of out there, spreading the message. And so unfortunately, some of them don't continue. I had a couple of neighbors who both their daughters were vegan, and they ended up getting sick, but I think they just weren't doing it right.
And whenever that
So
happens, I ask
yeah.
them, and 99% of the time they're eating just salads, or they
Right.
have no knowledge of nutrition.
Mhm.
Not that they were getting it before, but they started. You can't just live on salads.
Right.
And I have a certificate in plant-based nutrition from
Mhm.
Cornell University, and
Oh wow.
but it's actually, it's a great course, but it teaches you how to eat, and it teaches you how to look at studies, and how to understand studies and where they came from, and the biases in studies. It's a great course. But people need to, you know just be a little more compassionate and a little more loving in
Yeah.
life. That's all.
Absolutely.
The big myth that you can't get any protein on a vegan diet is absolutely nonsense because all grains, all beans,
Hmm.
all seeds, all nuts contain protein. That's
Right.
that's a lot of food right there.
Hmm.
That's a tremendous amount of food.
Yeah.
And the
So,
gorillas and elephants and all
Hmm.
the huge creatures are
right,
plant-based creatures.
Right.
right,
And where do they get their protein? From the plants. Where do fish get their omegas?
exactly.
From seaweed.
Seaweed. Yeah.
So when you're eating fish oil, you're eating the middleman, so to speak. You go to the source where it's
Right.
cleaner, and something doesn't have to die.
Right.
I remember once this person told me that they eat meat because the strength of the animal, and I said, "Well, what does the cow eat? The cow eats only plants, and you're eating the flesh of the cow when the
Hmm.
cow eats only plants.
Right.
That's absurd logic."
Yeah, that's like saying I eat brains because I want to be smarter.
Well, some people do that in the Middle East. To be honest with you, they have brain soup, which is disgusting. You know,
I
so
would say if you're eating brain soup, you're not getting smarter.
um, yeah. Anyway, well, it's great talk with you both, and so hopefully someday we will have a vegan planet where everyone's consciousness is raised and people live according
Right
to
on, man.
ahimsa,
And thanks for
nonviolence.
getting me on this. I appreciate it.
Yeah,
And
any
and thank
yeah,
you for mentioning ahimsa because that's what I practice. So
yeah,
that's nonviolence toward all creatures,
right.
Right
and
on,
people
man.
should look into ahimsa because it's beautiful.
Right, and that's one of the things. I mean, not with the yogis now. If you practice yoga, you need to be vegetarian. I mean, if you go out and say I'm a yoga teacher, then have a hamburger. I mean, come on, man, it's not a himsa. So,
Nope,
but yeah,
I had a qigong teacher tell me that you can advance to a certain level with eating flesh, but you can't progress past a certain point because your vibration does not allow it.
right, yeah. Well, it's been a pleasure to talk with you both. You both are
You
beacons
too,
in
sir. Thank you.
the
Hey, it's been a pleasure
path of
for
veganism.
you. Thank you
Great.
so much.
Okay. Well, blessings. Take care.
Blessing to you, bro. And you too,
I'll talk
John.
to you soon. Oh,
Well,
that's a
actually,
peace sign, not.
yeah.